credits are almost as long as the video. It's weird sitting under the video, by the way. You look at an extremely condensed version of it. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to move into the presentation itself, which consists of only 2 slides, and which is our prediction for the future, the next 20 years of the internet. Not really, of course, because who can predict that? Where are we? Oh, man, sorry. I'm just looking for the presentation right now. Okay, the name of the presentation that goes into this idea of that the video already proposes is Possessed by Us. There was an article in the paper the other day about the Pope. Francis, the first ever anarcho-syndicalist Pope, is talking about the devil. In spite of what many see as his left-wing progressive agenda, when it comes to Satan, Pope Francis is plotting back in time, back to the Middle Ages. And actually I forgot something else, because before we go further into this story, we should look at a second picture, which is a picture of the cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter and his wife Carol, touching each other's nose so they make an eternity loop. And on the left-hand down corner is the logo of Snapchat. So keep this in mind, we'll get back to this. So back to the Pope. So when the devil is, he's plotting, he's talking about the devil. And when the devil is back, exorcism is back too. Exorcists, after decades of marginalization, see their portfolios soaring. There is fast rising demand for their invaluable services. The newspaper criticized Pope Francis, saying he got old school in the devil. And a theologian said that he's opening the door to superstition. This, however, is exactly the point. Francis is not just a modern pope, but a pope of the zeitgeist. He understands that the problems that we face can't be captured by rationality alone. In Lisbon, Portugal, they are devoting tarot card games to the European Union-imposed sellout of the old city center to hotel conglomerates. Puzzled, as we all are, by the Hayekian bombardment of inevitable randomness onto our lives, rational debate will not render the odds in our favor any more than superstition will. We find ourselves unexpectedly praying to the stars, holding our smartphones like candles. The prayers are fragments of song lyrics and direct messages blended together into Stairway to Heaven, remixed by Diplo and Steve Reich. Indeed, the 1990s were the age of obsession, as in Calvin Klein, and its famous parody by Adbusters. Where there's a pub where everyone knows your name, where the streets have no name, where Sarajevo rejoices with Bono and Bill Clinton. The 1990s were the age of the Pars Pro Toto, the Royale with cheese that stands for the whole, Pulp Fiction, the discovery of the true meaning of recycling and nostalgia, centrism, the third way, non-governmental organizations, advertising, and finally Prada. Obsession, as in the gaze that can't stop watching, as in TV 24 hours per day, or flipping through magazines incessantly and obsessively in a pre-iPad routine that would later become the swipe. But there was a clear boundary, and it was me, myself, and I. That was the boundary of the 90s. And we were then already seeing some signs that things were about to change. Seinfeld's seminal fiction of a coffee table book about coffee tables contained a self-referential feedback loop, one about coffee tables. Similarly, there was the expression Malkovich, Malkovich, Malkovich that John Malkovich uttered when he finally got shown around into his own head in being John Malkovich. And these feedback loops were announcements of changes soon to come. Today, we see John Malkovich or other career actors playing the lead character in some lame European art house film set in Tuscany. And we see the first few minutes of these films on the plane only after we've seen first 2 or 3 others. And this tells us already how bad these movies are. In Night Train to Lisbon, Jeremy Irons, a semi-retired language teacher in Bern, Switzerland, saves a beautiful but unhappy girl from suiciding herself by preventing her from jumping off a bridge. After she disappears from his class, where he brings her to, he discovers some rare booklet she forgot, which relates to Portugal's erstwhile Salazar dictatorship, which brings him to Lisbon as he hurriedly and without a clear plan jumps on a Swiss regional train that very distinctly doesn't look like it will go to Lisbon, and instead looks like it will go no further than St. Gallen. So with large parts of Europe governed by neoliberal religion, economically in the rearguard, industrially dead, the true drama here is not the memory of distant authoritarianism. The true drama is how people learn to cope with the permanent dictatorship of capitalism, which means how people are learning to live with chaos. Indeed, the transnational tribe of flexible workers in art and design does not just live on rational thought, but equally on superstition and drugs. And what are the drugs? Coke, heroin, something stronger. Yes, way stronger. We are ourselves the drugs. We are addicted to each other. We are possessed by us. The age of the internet is not merely a sprawling network megastructure enveloping the world. It is the age of the massive emotional changes that this structure brings about in people. Bottom line is that the internet is dirty. It is deeply rotten, bad, and being governed in a truly sick manner, as we all know since Edward Snowden, but also before, but we can't live without it. The internet as a shorthand for a whole set of digital interfaces that we use to communicate with one another is changing the way we see others and the way we live with others. We can say also that the internet is a kind of drug, a narcotic, not in the obvious sense of addiction to web browsing or online gaming or those sort of more kind of retrograde sort of sicknesses, but more in the sense that it makes us, as mentioned, addicted to each other in new ways. So in a sense, the internet is not the most important drug, but its enabler, its agent, its interface. It shapes addiction. And the painful thing is that this addiction to each other is essentially a good thing. It is a revolution of love, channeled, however, by the continuous glitch, misunderstanding, craving, anxiety, and opacity which the asynchronicity of distant communication brings into human interaction. Two people can drive each other to medieval levels of madness merely by missing each other's phone calls or missing their WhatsApp status. There's been talk about officially designating the internet a forbidden substance to children. Admittedly, this talk was at a dinner table recently and not in the upper echelons of global governance, but that shouldn't matter. The point is that the internet is dirty and rotten and we can't live without it. So as I write these words in my hotel room, I hear an iPhone vibrating on a table in an adjacent room, or maybe that phone is on the floor. I have never seen my neighbor, but I know this sound. Someone is seeking synchronicity, sending messages. The phone buzzes again. Someone is chasing my neighbor's digital shadow. I imagine that my neighbor is a he. He is chaser, this time a she, but what do I know? It could be the other way around, or different altogether indeed. And I hope they will achieve synchronicity, but know deep in my heart that their messages never will. You need a response. Every cell of your body wants to be held. Technology drags a loving net around your every cell, making it ready for consumption by your favorite vampire. Love overwhelms even those who saw it coming. Fallen in love, we are no longer in charge, we are ungovernable. So love has always relied on structure from without. And in the past, love's spectrum was defined by a sequence of names for its management and control: courtship, engagement, and marriage. Now that these arrangements are in disarray, there is love for love, and its structure from without is a means of coordination around it, which means that a vast universe of formerly fixed arrangements, from work to leisure, from the university to the military, are becoming a structure governed by the laws of dating. Love lives alone and without a plan, providing pleasure and pain on a planetary scale. Love is a mirror to the vain, a cloud to the flying, a vision to the dreaming, a home to the roaming. Its promises forever unfulfilled. There is more waiting for love than there is making it. If love is stillness, our lives appear to be moving permanently. And if love is like the fastest quicksilver, then our days can seem motionless like stones. And there are people who know about this, and they are designers. How to design... Okay, there's room for debate here. Just for the sake of argument. How to design a permanently unfulfilled promise. When love becomes the hunting ground of venture capital, when emotions fuel the factories of immaterial currency, and when animal instincts are feeding into social media server farms, then we may soon find ourselves living and dying in a labor camp of love. Old cities were encircled by the protective walls of a wedding ring. New cities, ungoverned like love, had no central authority running their many sectors. New cities networked with others, embraced the world, and everyone living in them would soon be embracing one another. And as love got indexed and measured, and as it became data mined and exploited, an abstract superstructure of digital services became its architect, real estate agent, and chief advocate. While it holds a certain reminiscence to visions of a sort of 70s hyper-architecture of desire, vanguard cities of play and leisure as dreamed up by the situationists, this superstructure, however, lives only partially as an exoskeleton to human life right now, and increasingly as its internalized biological clock. Look no further for ungovernable love than inside your smartphone, where full communism awaits. So if capital is the usurper of contemporary emotion, how then about contemporary expression? One of the rotten internet's many virtues is its bigness, its capacity, therefore, to spread indifference at equal scale to trending topics. Images contained inside or released from the contractual walls of apps and services are marks of status, mostly. From flight MH360, which was the first aircraft to get lost in big data, to the Edward Snowden disembodied tablet robot. Okay. Where are we going? Wait. Yeah, the overtones of image are presence and absence more than joy or pain. Indeed, offline is temporary death. The single check mark of a message sent but not received, an unanswered thread of messages that slowly becomes a self-destructive monologue, a dark void in which the wildest projections and speculations are not only possible but also plausible. Sleep, the great offline, is the exact space-time countershape to the wild currents of desire and anticipation that lead up to it, that encircle it, that want it, but can never be it. Sleep, the lost territory unclaimed by capitalism, is already becoming one of life's scarcest resources, shrinking as it is like polar caps melting or bee populations diminishing. So in Snapchat, users can send pictures to one another like in any messaging application, but the pictures disappear within seconds and cannot be held onto. The person who invented this idea of disappearing pictures was a dreamer, someone with a true sense of what communication is doing to us and how we are chasing shadows, how we want something to last but just can't. And Snapchat designs that process for us. The company's logo, a little ghost, inspired the London-based artist and writer Jesse Darling to recently coin the term ghost modernity for the things Snapchat stands for, helps us do, and how it lets us live. And if a 25-year-old in London with an ultimate proficiency in all things effective labor, internet, and social media with no permanent residency and living on the cutting edge of an erupting volcano can come up with a word like ghost modernity, then this shows us again that Pope Francis is not that far off mark with his exorcisms. Ours is an age of possession, precisely because it becomes harder to hold on to anything. So TechCrunch wrote last year, if a picture is worth 1,000 words and a disappearing picture is worth $800 million, what's an idea worth? This referred to the case of Reggie Brown, the guy who had the idea for the disappearing pictures in Snapchat, but who was pushed out of the company before it became capitalized by Silicon Valley. At the heart of ghost modernity lie real dreams, mad visions, situationist détournements, surreal inversions of our perception. But the dreamer who comes up with the idea is often the first one to get sacked. The same goes for Twitter co-founder Noah Glass, who in 2006 wrote a visionary blog post where he said that, quote, "It was during our early discussions that the cold concept of status became imbued with the radiant use of human emotion, need, and desire. It became sensual, visual, and almost physical, but not fully yet. Personally, the actual physical manifestation occurred when I turned off my phone's ringer and flipped the switch to vibrate. I became interested in the reality that I could feel something. The expression of that feeling could create a physical and emotional sensation in multiple people far from me at exactly the same moment in time," end quote. And Noah Glass, like Reggie Brown, did not survive the career algorithms of Silicon Valley, demonstrating how difficult it is to be the uncredited architect of a dream. By contrast, Snapchat's in-house theorist, Nathan Jurgensen, who was recruited by the company to retrofit its ghost modern model with sociological backup, suggests under the headline The Liquid Self what the future of social media may be. Quote, dominant social media has thus far taken a stand, and a radical one, for a version of identity that is highly categorized and omnipresent, one that forces an ideal of a singular, stable identity that we will continuously have to confront, aka your Facebook profile. It is a philosophy that doesn't capture the real messiness and fluidity of the self, fails to celebrate growth, and is particularly bad for those most socially vulnerable. I wonder how we can build social media that doesn't always intensify our own relationships to ourselves by way of identity boxes. I think temporary social media will provide new ways of understanding the social media profile, one that isn't comprised of live, hacked into frozen, quantifiable pieces, but instead something more fluid, changing, and alive, end quote. So what Nathan Jurgensen calls temporary is now often called ephemeral social media, or the so-called ephemeral content space, which is Silicon Valleyese for an undiscovered stratosphere of human contact. Ephemeral means that things are less permanent and possibly less public than Facebook, Google+, and the other identity boxes. And an ephemeral app centers on a non-permanent but highly addictive visual narcotic with the power to quickly scale and trend. And this app then has to be turned into a business model. And further down Snapchat's line is Whisper, an app which allows for users to share material of an explicitly secretive kind, the so-called things you wouldn't share on Facebook. So these services seem to have built as many venues for as many intimacies as there are versions of the self, shared with specific people rather than acquaintance with everyone. And another app in this vein, centered on reinventing the concept of dating, was called Superficial by some critics. And the app's founder brazenly stated in response that those who find his service superficial are themselves superficial. And in a sense, this rhetorical answer, this feedback loop, is bound to prove true. The digital industrialization of human emotion, the cloudification of man's desire, seems set on an irreversible course. The dominant mobile platforms, iOS and Android, now account for the vast majority of the world's smartphones and tablets. The walls between network and life have long since tumbled. That Silicon Valley has turned out its main monetizer is a geopolitical tour de force comparable to old world colonialism. But you already knew that. The internet is, after all, dirty. So I'm writing these words from an airport where all signage, floors and walls, and all furniture are all set in shades of black, white, and gray. The big capital letters that designate the gate areas seem to be drawn by pencil. In between the gates are grids of flat screens with experimental clocks and strange-looking world maps. And all these are works of art, constant reminders of the space of flows. And with a solemnity reminiscent of a science fiction film, the airport stillness in the early morning seems to absorb all chaos into its black, white, and gray totality, a digital cushion, a silent headphone. And here something comes to mind which initially seemed in no way related to the story of our being possessed by us, but it's related. In his book, I Am a Strange Loop, the cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter goes as far as claiming that multiple bodies can share the same soul, and that hence we may have no selves in the sense that we commonly think we do. And here he is. Instead, he argues, our shared souls are self-referential feedback loops by which we live in each other, like in Being John Malkovich, but then positively, seriously, beautifully. And as if in tune with the story, as if he'd read what I just read, of the story of us being possessed by us, Hofstadter writes, quote, I host and am hosted by others, demonstrating how one consciousness can loop into another, that we can be schools of fish of two or more. So Hofstadter's doubt around the idea of a walled, separate self is one way to argue why the term selfie is so deeply flawed. The story of disappearing pictures on the internet becomes even more intriguing when it gets seen with overtones of subtraction and loss. Hofstadter illustrates his point most strikingly in the chapter about the sudden death of his wife Carol, with whom Hofstadter shared a very intense emotional bond and 2 children. At some point, he describes the third birthday of his daughter Monica just after Carol died. And he's looking at his daughter Monica at her birthday and realizing he's seeing her for Carol. They are sharing their eyes. He calls it seeing Monica for Carol. And at another time, Hofstadter is discussing with his mother a photo of his dad, who had also died actually a few years before. And mother said, quote, "Smiling at a photo is wrong because it's not him. It's just a flat, meaningless piece of paper." And Hofstadter then analyzes that the situation may be much more complicated than that. Quote, "Yes, on the surface it seems that this photo is an inert, lifeless, soulless piece of paper. But somehow it reaches her, it touches her. And this brought to my mind the set of lifeless, soulless pieces of paper comprising the complete works of piano of Frédéric Chopin. Though just pieces of paper, they have incredible effects on people all over the world. So might it be with that photograph of my dad. It certainly causes deep rumblings in my brain when I look at it, and in many others. For us, that photo is not just a physical object with mass, size, color, and so forth. It is a pattern imbued with fantastic triggering power. Substitute internet or smartphone, better even just image, for the photo of his dad." Thank you. Oh, it disappeared.
Here already. Okay, good. So thanks a lot, Daniel, for this fantastic presentation. And there's almost, let's say, a direct line from yours to mine. But I will be talking less about love, even though I will be talking about smartphones, but about sex. So I will present two small examples, all of which were presented to me very recently, so I haven't really had time to get to the bottom of things, but anyway, I want to share it with you because I think they touch upon basically the same note which I called code without contract before. And the first was a conversation that happened actually during or shortly prior to the opening of this show with a very interesting developer who also lives in Eindhoven, who really gave me a completely different view of what photography or photographic representation means nowadays, because I'm still under the impression, right, that you have a camera and that there is something out there, and then you click the camera and then the something out there will somehow be represented via indexical link, and somehow there will still be a connection, between the two. Maybe I will just use the other microphone over there. Okay. Is this? Okay, yeah, it's much better. Yeah, but he blithely told me, and this was really eye-opening to me, that this is not how it works nowadays, because if you have a smartphone and you have a camera in it, then you take into, then you put up with the fact that the lens is complete crap, right? It's not a real camera lens, which means that the data that are captured by the sensor are mostly crap too. So 50% or a large percentage of this data is just noise, no? So how does the camera or the smartphone know which data are the image and which are noise or crap? It's got to make a decision. So how does it do that, no? What's basically the algorithm to separate the data from the noise? And here we are back with what Josephine alluded to earlier on the question of noise. So the thing is that the smartphone basically goes through its own database. It looks at the folders of pictures it already has and tries, and also to the social media profiles of the people who are linked with it, and tries to match faces and shapes. And you know, via computer vision and object recognition, it tries to see whether there is anything it knows already. And if there is anything it knows and this matches to the data captured by the sensor, then this will be privileged over, you know, over the noise, over what is then declared as noise. And I think in relation to the question of photography, this is entirely fascinating, because the phone doesn't capture the thing in the front of the lens, but it basically creates a hybrid of memory, and also basically it pictures the network itself, because the photograph is networked already. It goes through the whole network before basically defining its shape by clearing what it then defines as noise from what it defines as picture. So in that sense, the present relation, or the indexic link, is shattered, because, you know, the picture that results is basically a picture half from memory. And so I will come back to this later. Oh yes, I mean, there's of course also a lot of other, you know, potential interferences into what your camera does or your smartphone does, because obviously there are so many, let's say, potential external influences. You can shut it off externally, you can shut it on, you can define whole areas which cannot be photographed, and so on and so on. So basically, thinking of a camera as a tool which you can use is a bit of a tricky question right now, because you might use it, but it might also use you, so to speak. No, it might use your network, it might use your database. So in that sense, the relation has become a bit more tricky. I'm trying to cut now as we speak. So the question is now, of course, what is, so to speak, the algorithm, or what are the rules inside the network that will make the distinction between what's acceptable in an image, or what the thing is that you want to see actually, and the thing defined as noise. So what's the boundary between noise and image? And I think in this, I will give an example right now, which is the example of the development of the so-called DIC algorithm, which is a kind of interesting feature under development that tries to basically do the opposite of face recognition, you know, which got pretty far already, which has achieved near human results according to Facebook, which has developed a feature called deep face. So is there anything basically that does the opposite, namely automatically recognize those parts of the body that should not go into a social media network like Facebook? No, Facebook has a very clear policy, as you all know, and it's called Facebook, of course, because you cannot have any bots on it. So this is the reason. No? You have to get rid of the bots, and then it's Facebook. No. So the question, and there's very clear guidelines for that, which are actually kept secret. This is a list leaked by a subcontractor who is actually living in Morocco. He was hired for $4 an hour to enforce the rules of Facebook of what kind of picture content is acceptable on it and not. I will not go through this in detail, most of it is known. Just to make it short, it's perfectly okay on Facebook to show the insides of the body. No, I mean, there's an explicit rule which says crushed heads, limbs, etc. are okay. Deep flesh wounds are okay, and excessive blood is okay to show too. But when it comes to the surface of the body, this is very clearly regulated, and most of the surface of the body cannot be shown. And this, as I said, is monitored and policed through people living in the Philippines, Mexico, India, Turkey, and so on, through subcontractors to do this job for a wage of about $4 US per hour. So this really made me curious, again, as to the question, is there a bot algorithm? No? Is there anything that would mechanically or automatically do the jobs that these people are doing, which would work in the same way as face recognition does? And the problem came to public attention first time in 2009 when someone introduced the online video service called Chatroulette, which was basically like let's call it a meeting platform, very neutrally, which was defined by the next feature. If you didn't like someone, you just nexted the person. And the problem, or the circumstance was that a quite substantial number of the people on there didn't really show their face to their interlocutor but other body parts, and this became a real issue for the platform, you know, because actually they went bankrupt because of this this circumstance, and they couldn't find any solution for it. So I think Business Week, they made a contest to look for a solution for a Chatroulette, and someone called John came up with an idea. He said, well, you have a picture, run face recognition and iris recognition on it, and if it's not a face, it must be a dick. Get rid of it, no? Yeah. And actually, this is also the technology that the British Secret Service used in their program called Optical Nerve, which I think it was in 2008, like bulk collected Yahoo chat video imagery, like random overall. I think they intercepted the webcam stills from 1.8 million Yahoo users, and the reason was that they wanted to improve their face recognition technology and iris recognition technology. They were working on that. And they had the same issue because they realized that, and they give precise numbers, 7% of all the webcam stills intercepted did not show faces at all. So again, they came up with the solution to exclude the genitalia by using face recognition and simply getting rid of everything that wasn't a face. And they also gave guidelines how to handle this kind of material in a slide leaked again by Edward Snowden. So there was a huge, let's say, potential for further development in this case, and people responded to this. This is a probabilistic skin map color, which allows algorithms to recognize skin. So this became the next new thing. How much skin is there in a picture? And if, you know, the amount of skin corresponds to this equation, then it's probably porn, or, you know, just an unacceptable amount of skin. There's even, you know, instructions which say if the percentage of skin pixels is less than 15%, the image is not nude. And this is being refined over a whole range of different possibilities. And if all of this is not the case, the image is nude. So this created the first, let's say, skin detectors, which were ridiculed very quickly because they had such a big amount of false positives. These are wrapped meatballs, as you can see, that were identified by the algorithm as undesirable nudity. I prefer this example where you have a tank for some reason, which is being detected or caught. This is an automatic rifle and so on. So in a way, probabilistic skin detection didn't really work, or not well enough. So people now, and very recently, are coming up with something else. And this is, let me try to find the correct terminology for this. This is self-learning technology based on neural networks, computational verb theory, and cognitive computation. In a way, this is tied into an effort to make cognition as such computable. And you know, if you apply this to the field we're talking about, this results in a very interesting paradox, because for any kind of program or software to exclude something, you must first feed it with a lot of examples of what you want to exclude. Meaning that if you want to exclude genitalia, then you have to install folders on your desktop which read areola, asshole, blowjob, breast, and so on, and have to teach your software how to avoid them. And I'm really taken by the, let's say, bluntness of these databases. In this database, you have 460 different samples of asshole/mix, right? And this is asshole only, and there's another one which is mixed with partial pussy, right? And then you have the same for blowjob, profile, not focused, and then you have like not exactly blowjob, but sort of blowjob, no? And all of them in examples of hundreds, the same for pussy, and so on and so on. And all this results in a very, let's say, detailed range of detectors which detect certain body parts, like breast detector, pussy detector, pubic hair detector, asshole detector, dick detector. And then, you know, this whole list of things is the list of positions recognized by what is called the so-called fuck detector, right? And it goes into such an amazing detail that I have to say I don't even know what they are actually talking about when they talk about the chambers fuck or the playing of the cello position. But rest assured, you don't have to know what it is, because your software will know it and get rid of it, you know, because you even had a chance to go into what this is supposed to mean. So yes. So this is interesting because it creates, of course, a grammar of images, a state where images are grammatized to a degree which we didn't know before they are tagged. You know, they are basically translated into a mathematical order. And this again reminds me of something that Roland Barthes once wrote about the Marquis de Sade's writing, that the Marquis de Sade, in his detailed and boring and pedantic and taxonomic description of the sex object, created what Barthes calls a porn grammar, no? Something which is just as orderly and detailed and, well, tedious, no, than usual grammars. And I see this porn grammar basically also present in a mass grammatization, no, of nudity, of sexual relations, but also of desirable and undesirable social relations that's going on online. And I just love these abstract diagrams that arise in this kind of recognition software. Porn grammar. So let me get back again to the beginning, because I was talking about the phone, which is able to separate the data from the noise. Any phone can learn, you know, to apply such distinctions or algorithms, so that basically you couldn't, I mean, your phone would decide on your behalf, your camera would decide on your behalf if you could possibly photograph such a situation or not. And this question of trying to separate the noise from something else refers, in my mind, or I relate it, to a much older political and social algorithm that Rancière has famously described. When you want to, you know, define or to distinguish the citizen from the rabble, the person that has political rights, it is recognized as a subject, is able and allowed to speak. If you want to recognize or distinguish this person from the slave or the domestic worker, the woman, the worker as such, and so on, you declare the speech of the last category as noise. You just say, and this is the long quote which I have copy-pasted right here, that they are just producing noise, and the other people, the citizens, the subjects, are producing speech, right? So in a way, there's a clear, let's say, political background, underlying base, no, for the question of how to separate noise from speech, or noise from image, or noise from data. It is, of course, linked to assigning certain social positions. But, and this is, of course, I mean, here we're still in the paradigm of representative politics, right? Because we could say that, you know, if everyone's speech is recognized as speech and not as noise, and everyone is sort of given their rights and their fair share and so on, then we would come to a sort of equal position, which in a way is the idea of representative politics as such. But I think the previous presentations have made the point very clearly that we have lost that certainty of who is representing what. No, and also the example of the camera itself makes the point. What is the photograph representing? What kind of link does it have now to the thing in front of the camera when it's already being pre-formatted, so to speak, as to decide, as to separate the data from the noise? So I would like, as a last small example, go into the example of Twitter bots, just like David, and not only just individual Twitter bots, but political bot armies. And David has already given an example of how these work in Russia, but they have also been active in Mexico, very prominently in Syria, and also in Turkey. And I will draw my examples from Turkey. In Turkey, all political parties are said to operate bot armies, and the biggest one is the bot army of the ruling AK party. And they are said to, and this is all based on research by two guys called Peter Nutt and Dieter Leder, one of which is based in Ankara, and they found these bot armies, these Twitter bots, that are basically tweeting out messages supportive of the ruling AK party and Prime Minister Erdogan on certain Twitter hashtags like Twitter Turkey in order to distort and spam the discussion on these hashtags. So Twitter Turkey was launched when Twitter was banned by Prime Minister Erdogan, and the bots respond by basically posting advertisement for the AK on the same hashtag. And this is particularly funny because they are all advertising a video game which exchanges Flappy Bird. I don't know if you know this. It's a game played on a smartphone. You have to keep a bird alive, and this is the Turkish AK version of it. You have to keep the Prime Minister Erdogan alive, no, by hitting the screen of your phone like crazy. And the Twitter bots, they are basically advertising this under a oppositional hashtag. So this is how the spamming works by bot armies. And one of the nice points is that this picture belongs, it shows the face of Robbie Williams, and this is Megan Fox, and this person who is called Hakan430, I will come back to him in a minute. One interesting feature about the Twitter bots is also that they do not only tweet political advertisement, but in order to be closer to, let's say, human behavior on Twitter, they also have to post other things. This is a Twitter a bot that quotes Montaigne and Al Pacino, Hidden Love, The Beaver. They have a huge pop cultural knowledge, those bots. And there are also bots, even though I couldn't find them, but the researchers insist on it, that quote Thomas Hobbes constantly. So let's go back to the question, who is a bot army? What does it mean? As I said, this is Robbie Williams, this is Megan Fox, and they are all advertising this Flappy Tayyip video game. And this is, of course, a bit complicated because Twitter Turkey arose because Prime Minister Erdogan had personally banned Twitter. No? And he had banned Twitter on the grounds that fake evidence was spread across Twitter and YouTube, which would show, for example, his son accepting bribes, and all this kind of evidence, or let's say recordings, were disseminated on social media. This is why they got banned. And the position of the government was to say, oh, this is all fake. They are all montaged and dubbed. And montaged and dubbed is, of course, the prime definition of how these Twitter bots are constituted, because they are, montaged big time by just taking faces of celebrities and dubbing them with confusing advertisement, and also trying to confuse, the message of the hashtag. So montage and dubbing is one of the prime features of constructing these Twitter bots. And I would like to come back to Hakan again, because, in a, let's say, alarming, or in an example that shows the alarming efficiency of face recognition today, I found his real Twitter account. And this is what it looks like. he's saying, check out of some screenshots of my latest DVD, live free webcam show, and so on. So he's basically a gay porn star. He's a web service provider of effective labor. And of course, I took away his name. I will call him Murat from now on, just to make a difference to Hakan, who is the bot. So this is Murat, Hakan is the bot. Who is Hakan? And why is Hakan quoting Thomas Hobbes? This is the thing that I couldn't understand, no? And then I thought, what could he be quoting? And he would probably quoting Leviathan, no? Because this is Thomas Hobbes' most famous book. And Leviathan is basically a treatise it's basically one of the defining books to define representative politics. Hobbes describes a state, basically this is the English Civil War going on, where everyone is fighting against everyone. You have state militias. There is a state of nature, as he calls it, going on, in which everyone is everyone else's wolf, no? And against that, he proposes a social contract, a state contract that would basically take away the right of people to kill one another and displace it onto a sovereign. This is basically what Leviathan is about. And the interesting question is that now we seem to be really in an opposite situation when the contract, the social contract that has been defining representative politics for so long is falling apart in many places all over the world, and we are left basically with a state in which militias and Twitter bots and people who you don't even know who they are fighting against one another by way of policed relational metadata and hijacked hashtags. And there's one other aspect to it, because Leviathan also gives us a clue about what the bots are, how to describe him. I said they are montaged and dubbed, sure. But Leviathan also gives us an instruction or a definition of what an artificial person is. This is interesting because this is probably an artificial person. Not this one, but I'm sorry, Hakan is an artificial person. So the artificial person is opposed in Hobbes to a natural person, and this would be a natural person. And an artificial person is someone who uses someone else's words, who is basically possessed or taken over by someone else's words, and this would be the case of an artificial person. But the interesting thing is that in Hobbes, the contract itself is the artificial person. Let me give you an example. This is the famous image on the cover of Leviathan. It shows how the contract, the sovereign, is composed of all these other people, and he, the contract, the sovereign, which in Hobbes' view are very close to one another, which he calls artificial person, is representing everyone else. So everyone is being represented by this one artificial person, and this is representative politics. Now, I would like to argue, and this is basically also the end of the presentation, that with the Twitter bots, exactly the opposite is happening. No, it's not the multitude represented by one social contract and one artificial body, but a multitude of artificial bodies which are montaged and dubbed, no? Which are speaking with someone else's voice, and they are all saying the same, right? They are all saying, play Flappy type. So it's exactly the other way around. And this is where I see basically the main distinction between a representative paradigm and that has been described today in very, very different versions as a post-representative paradigm. We are in a period where basically there's a multitude of artificial persons that have regressed not to a state of nature, as Hobbes would call it, but to a state of artifice, where you have Twitter bots and natural and artificial persons fighting it out against each other. And this is probably also the reasons why all of these, Twitter bots are desperate desperately quoting Hobbes. No, because I guess that they are already sick of a situation in which you have Robbie Williams, who has been hijacked by the IDF bot army, against Robbie Williams, who has been hijacked by, a Russian bot army, against Robbie Williams, hijacked by the Mexican PRI, and all these Robbie Williams are fighting against one another while, quoting Hobbes, and I think they just want some entity to afford, to be able to afford dental care or child care, and they don't care whether it's called Leviathan or Moby Dick or even Flappy Type. This is what they are trying to tell us by quoting Hobbes. That's the end. Thank you. Try. Sure. David, can you moderate?
Yeah, I'll use this one just. Thank you for those two very intense and amazing talks, and maybe now we move into a discussion and start sort of with the last two talks, and maybe also with questions from the audience. Do we have a microphone again? Yeah. Sort of floating around. And if there's an immediate question to both panels, both talks, then maybe we should have it now. If not, then I'll ask one immediately. So no? Yes, no? Okay. So I guess I have to really ask a question about possession and love. I'm trying to get the two talks together in that way, and want to understand. First of all, one thing about love is that wasn't clear to me to the end. So, are we actually in a state of love, or are we in a state of desire? And are we possessed rather by the image of love, the distant image of love, or is this actually this kind of cycle? Labor, love becomes labor, labor becomes love. Is this a reality?
Right. The question freaks me out.
Because you said before, also I think in Brian's text in your film, there was this
Brian Coonwood.
Brian Coonwood.
He has a last name too.
Where there was this trope of depletion and of total depletion. This is something I can definitely identify with, and the ideology of love floating in the air somewhere is also something very familiar. But can we really say that we're in love, or are we so depleted that we don't even know what that is anymore? That would be my first question.
Well, I mean, I think. I think. Can I answer?
No, go ahead. I will answer.
If you want to answer for me, please do. But no, I think that first of all, we're talking about not so much. Okay, we're living in an age of love. I mean, that's a rhetorical proposition. There's like different. The film is one thing, which indeed uses an edited version of Brian Coonwood's essay, Is It Love? And a part of that essay against models of the New Babylon, the city model developed by Constant, the sculptor and architect and visionary. And actually what we're trying to talk about in a way that's not so technical, but that's like way much more sort of identifying with what the structure is like being used for, is what are the mediating channels of human communication? Like, we're sitting next to each other here, David, and we would assume that we have an unmediated direct conversation, but in fact we don't. This exchange is already mediated by the fact that we are convening on the standard of speaking English, for example. So you could say that the myth that there is like a cyberspace, a virtual space where there is like, electronic exchanges between people who have, see each other as Twitter bots, or robots or like inverse body politics versus like direct interaction, that distinction is kind of melting. And I think that, you know, the sort of contemporary social media, like the Snapchat people, etc., are constantly arguing that what happens in Snapchat is real. That produces real effects in people. It's not some sort of virtual thing, right? So we're talking about like a proliferation of interfaces that actually create, you know, addictive versions of love and desire. Yeah, and we're also talking about the sort of structure that's behind that basically capitalizes on this, you know, increasingly precarious, you know, pre-digitariate proletariat something, you know. So and we haven't worked out yet, you know, the sort of complete architecture of that yet. We haven't, you know, created a sort of Jeremy Bentham panopticon of that, and we don't think that, you know, it's that easy. You know, the political problem of the internet is not that we can even create a clean internet next to the dirty one. You know, the fact is that we have to live through this dirty internet. And that's the real political challenge. So I think this is probably not answering all of your concerns, but maybe it gives some sort of vector.
But I think, you know, very clearly the proposition is made that love is the form, and love not only as in romantic life, I will elaborate on that social relations are taking on nowadays, and also production is mediated by love. And I think once one expands the notion of love beyond romantic love and defines love as in family love and duty, and, you know, I mean, there's so many economies already built on that, no? That built on consensus and on the, let's say, extraction of consensus into unpaid production. I mean, feminist literature is full of examples like that, no? So in that sense, I think it's true, love is one of the main paradigms of the contemporary, not paradigms, flows, channels, if you like, no? And that love is uncontrollable. This was a very beautiful passage in your talk, and that it would be great, you know, nowadays to have a little less love and a little more infrastructure, no? Yeah, because love is like, it's like too much, and also it can be extremely conservative, and this is how it's being actualized, I think, globally in many economies, no, nowadays, as the basically demand for people to do things for free, whether it is, you know, caring for their elderly relatives or doing something in their neighborhood or whatever, no? This is the economy of love and exhaustion.
I would like to put something opposite to this economy of love. I mentioned Wendy Chun and the talk that she gives about leaky networks. In that, actually, she mentions a problem that we see online, which is that conservative forces are also, so anti or hate forces are also how do you say that, enforced. And she particularly refers to this case of this Canadian schoolgirl who killed herself after she was stalked by a Dutch guy, actually, and who followed her from school to school and kept entering her Facebook page and so forth. And what's interesting there is that what we see with these girls that expose themselves on webcams and then get stalked or that get put into really extreme situations is that they have become the present day version of the girl who walks down the street with a short miniskirt and who, you know, calls for sexual harassment, apparently.
Yeah, this is one thing I just, you know, cut from the talk because it was getting too long, but this is exactly the flip side of the economy of love, is the economy of shame. And basically face and bot is the distinction. I mean, the sort of, you know, algorithm that defines the accepted family love, that one that can be productively activated and leads to people taking their accepted social roles, and they are, of course, allowed, you know, a little space, moving space within that, and separates that from policing the girl that is wearing too short skirts and so on. So, but I think this is really the flip side. If you have this economy of love, then you will also have this economy of shame. It's basically the same seen from another perspective.
Guys, come on.
Shall I start again? I don't know why I came up with this exactly, but something popped into my head as you were speaking about all of these things. And I just had the idea that the internet is either MSG or it's salt. They both amplify a flavour that's already existing in raw ingredients. We are already as dirty or as loving or as easy or as whatever. And it's just a question of how fast and easy you want those flavours to come to your surface. Or how fast and easy you want them to on your tongue. I don't know, it has nothing to do with what you're talking about. But I just mean that you've been talking about the internet as being dirty, but actually we are all dirty. The internet's not dirtier than us.
But there are people out there who really want to keep the internet clean and who are really working. I mean, this is the point somehow, yeah, with all of these dick algorithms and so on. Actually, something from the Russian context that really rhymes with that same internet league, the League for Internet Cleanliness or whatever, safe internet, that I was quoting before, they actually made a similar database for child pornography now. But, you know, for live evaluators to evaluate kiddie porn on the Russian web. So there's, you know, they've put out it's this paradoxical effect of, you know, the internet censor lobby putting out a fat 400-page book of, you know, exactly the kind of images you just saw, except with children. So the dirtiest possible thing.
And a book, even a printed book.
A printed book that they will distribute to live people, not feed into algorithms. You know, so that's an interesting. I think you're right though about the amplification, but it's often a paradoxical amplification. The internet amplifies. So this, you see what I'm saying? The cleanliness, the obsession with cleanliness from this internet league produces filth. The kind of filth that even a child pornographer probably wouldn't be able to collect on his or her computer in that amount and breadth.
Maybe other ideas about this question? Yes.
I just want to have other things, but one is the question of love and that love is kind of unconditional, and how to deal with this idea of, I mean, if what you say is love and or unfulfilled desire or maybe even affect, yeah, how do you deal with this kind of unconditional condition? And the other question was the face as a territory because of face recognition. What happens when it's not recognized? What happens to the algorithm? Are they infinite until they are recognized, or do they stop at a certain place? Because I think it's an infinite loop. Because the algorithm doesn't stop by itself. There's not a click. The Facebook kind of cannot identify the face. Because of something, it will go infinite till the face is recognized.
Till it's born.
It's kind of scary, I would say.
You have to make the face for the algorithm at a certain point, otherwise it will not stop.
Yeah.
But the first part of your question is I guess it was also the same mistake maybe I was making. If I think that love is, you know, if we think of love, you know, love, this kind of unconditional openness and embracing of another, but you know, toward another. But maybe this is not the kind of love that is meant here. I don't know. Is it as unconditional as that?
Love? That's basically my kind of question. Is it not affect or this state of becoming, or because I think love is kind of unconditional. So it's also the term you use is quite a.
I mean, are you talking about the film? Are you talking about the talk, or the sort of shared implications of both?
Yeah, maybe the
Right.
It's the invitation to activate and mine the
It's
other
triggering.
till
It's
it's
sort of
total, till
triggering.
his or her total ruin. That's the unconditional thing.
Yeah, but yeah. Well, we're talking about code without contract, right? So we're talking about signs and signals and appearances that don't necessarily indicate this kind of unconditional contract that would traditionally be associated with love. So we're talking about an equal part design misunderstanding or unintentional misunderstanding and glitch, and we're also talking about things that are extremely ephemeral in this case. So I don't think we talk about these long-term contracts. I mean, one thing that the text that the proposal that we're working on tries to do is link this whole world to the work of Douglas Hofstadter, indeed, who has a much deeper understanding of like what sort of what images trigger and stuff like that. And actually, he develops his whole own thesis around this chapter around this like wife who died, and he basically claims that only married couples can achieve the kind of intimacy that they sort of start sharing souls, and then he talks about someone's inner fire, but then he talks about 5 lines later he talks about Christmas shopping. So you think like, okay, there's always this American way to sort of make it completely acceptable and very, very sort of non-transgressive in a sense. But if you take those non-transgressive elements from like his writing and you look purely at what he proposes about like the way that we actually maybe share a consciousness or share like a feeling, that is actually quite radical what he's proposing. So if we talk about all these kind of enormous streams and circulations of images as purely self-presentation, it would be in a way a sort of quite boring idea. But if we are talking about actually something where people are attempting to do actually much more than that, then it becomes like kind of way more interesting. And we think that in terms of social media as a phenomenon, we're talking about like face annexation. We're talking about also the ban on all kinds of body parts, etc. That is about boxed identity. So that's about places where you can completely harvest someone's identity once this person is in that particular network. And the idea is that there's a kind of more that there's a model for social media that doesn't necessarily create these kind of big boxes, although no one has proven that yet, because of course the monetization of it is depending on these kind of things. Yeah.
Since you ended on the word monetization, my question was is related to whether there could be commercialization of value propositions along with non-commercialization of value propositions. So the idea is, can they coexist so that, for instance, in a way, what we used to couch surfing was a way of sharing without necessarily paying for something, for a service. But then Airbnb came around and said, no, well, we are paying for renting our space and staying at somebody's house. And so therefore then couch surfing had to monetize also its service. So the question would be, are these two, why I'm asking this in relation to what you've been talking about, is again in relation to the love, because to me love is also something in the internet age. It's something that comes without necessarily value proposition that is monetized. And so are we doomed to see non-commercializable value propositions always being taken over by commercialized versions of them?
That's a good question. I cannot answer that, but I have an example which talks to that. And so the question I cannot answer, but I can give an example which would give another version, and this is the example of something which is, in my view, closely related to love, namely this security breach or code bug called Heartbleed. And I was so taken by its name, you know, because what else is love than Heartbleed, no? I mean, this is like the perfect expression of love, no, in this whole area. And the whole issue is all around love. Because Heartbleed is about basically a error, writing error in code, no, that people made because they were completely exhausted, the programmers, because they were still operating in this old paradigm of sharing and open software and contributing your labor and co-writing everything, no? And this is because, you know, they're completely underfunded. They got like, I don't know, $2,000 in contributions over the last year, so they are not getting paid for this. And this was OpenSSL, meaning an encryption service that is being used by basically a lot of commercial software applications and so on. So, but they were not getting paid for it. They were doing it for love, right? And because of love and complete exhaustion, one of them made this error. Simply didn't spell the code correctly. And the corporations that are integrating this free software created of the ethos of love and sharing, right? They didn't even bother to audit the code to see whether it was correctly written or not. They wouldn't even invest that amount of, you know, resources into taking over something that had arisen from this economy of love.
So you're arguing that actually Heartbleed is a direct product of this sort of
Exactly.
love-based
Yes.
sort of free labor precarity?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But then it was, of course, it was commercialized, not taken over, but the thing is that also the exhaustion was integrated into the systems. This was basically like a Trojan horse that reintroduced the exhaustion but induced by love, no pure unconditional love, reintroduced it into commercial systems as basically a breakdown and failure. I think this is a really beautiful example.
But Heartbleed also, like, I still don't understand what Stuxnet means. I mean, I'm trying to find out, but I haven't found out. So Heartbleed is a way more appealing name.
Yeah.
So are we also, you know, is it like the less funding you give your coders, the more attractive the kind of virus will be that comes out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about
Okay.
marriage of code bugs,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But it's always been, no? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me just briefly go back to the Rancière's example, right? When he distinguishes between noise and speech or data, the thing that is called noise is the area of love. It's the area of the house, of privacy, of childcare, you know, also of sex. So all of this is noise, no? And this is, as Hannah Arendt has defined, this is the area of slavery. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not so romantic nowadays.
No, and just to add to that, actually, you know, I think family and all these reproductive labor things that were previously unrecognized are incredibly commercialized. No, I mean, it's the biggest money trap of all, and there should be no myths about the non-commercial. I don't know. I don't know if I agree that a labor of love is automatically non-commercial. It's already commercially involved and implicated, and a lot, you know, historically as well as in the present moment. But that just as an aside.
But we talk, actually the talk is about circulationism, so maybe we should try and link this back to circulationism in some way, right? The idea that there is like some data or images that are circulating heavily, you know, like either in Russia, you know, or it's the Twitter bots, or it's the pictures that people are sending around, etc. What I think is also based on your writing in Too Much World Tour. That you write about spillover effect. So there's no more this contained, like these kind of, you know, image wars, or these are not contained. They lead to leaks, and they lead to all kinds of things. So these kind of digital and physical are completely mixed up. So, you know, hence you have branded revolutions, you know, Facebook revolution, Twitter revolution, and of course all kinds of more chaotic, interesting things. Do you see the same sort of, do you see that from the Twitter bots that you've observed, real political effects on the ground are actually coming off? Or is this merely something that plays out in an area that you could compare to spam in email? Because, I mean, for me, I would know how to disregard these tweets because I see that they're bots. So what is their sort of political, their raw impact of these things?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
No, I mean they are relatively new phenomena, and the bots are getting better at not being recognized. Also because they enlist
They
humans.
get smarter.
Yes,
Yeah.
they enlist humans to enter captures, so they are getting smarter. But let me give you an example which is a bit different, which is a real-world correlation that totally fascinated and shocked me also. This is, let's say, another more unpredictable way, because you were mentioning spam. It turned out that one of the world's biggest spam barons became recently the Minister for Culture and Law in Delhi on the ticket of an anti-corruption party. Anyhow, this is his past. He was a spam baron. He was sending out all these, well, trillions of emails. And now he's Minister for Culture and Law. And what does he do during his short tenure? He was only in office for, 2 months before the whole city government stepped back. He organized a vigilante raid in a neighborhood in Delhi to basically terrorize and hunt down African women, which he considered to be prostitutes, no? So in that sense, I'm saying, wow, this is a spam baron. No, spam is mainly comprised, or to a large extent comprised of image spam showing attractive people, no, in all sorts of nudity. And in real life, this person is exactly, concerned about maintaining the economy of love versus the economy of shame, and basically, literally heading out on his own to lynch mob black women.
Right.
So this is another way how this relationship can play out. It's not linear.
Right, and is that then, because that seems to be like quite similar to that inversion that you talked about the body politic, right? Like here also you say like there's no spam revolution, it's rather the spam lord who is installing the kind of anti-women martial law total deportation system thing. So is that comparable to like Yevgeny Morozov's sort of reasoning that state authorities are way smarter at using social media than activists are, and that actually all these things become instruments of the state? Because with the Twitter bot, you could argue that's a clear instrument of the state, right?
Yes, well, I cannot answer the question,
No.
but the thing that is interesting for me is that these bots are the image of the people, no? Mm-hmm. They are supposed to be the people, the vox pop.
Robbie Williams.
Yeah, including Robbie Williams, no? He's the mayor of the spam bots or something. So these are the people now in this post-representative paradigm we have entered, and I'm always for taking this as face value and not saying these are fake people. This is the people now. This is the reality of how the people operates. By if let's say online comments and all of this is being measured as a sort of affective feedback into governmental policies, then all of the input of the spam bots, as clumsy, as it may be in many cases, is counted into that figures, and in this way they are part of the people, and this is interesting for me. And I don't even know. I'm not condemning it. No, I don't think that they have more or less reason to be in the public sphere. They are a part of it now.
But, bots are not just used in political campaigns, of course. They are also flooding Facebook. Fake profiles are trying to hook up with you in order to gather your data. So bots are not just part of a political sphere, but also the economical sphere. So you could say, if I follow your logic, that we're moving towards a bot society.
Yeah. But this was the fascinating point I found, in David's presentation, that real people nowadays can be considered bots. And that this is also on this level the distinction between behind screen and in front of the screen has vanished because you look at someone. Is this a
now
bot?
you're entering in a very now you're entering into a plane where we can also start debating whether bots are people. And you've already started this, and there is. Actually, I saw 2 articles coming by from Ricardo Dominguez, I suppose you know his name, from the Electronic Disturbance Theater, where people in California are starting to debate whether the laws that we have for IA, for artificial intelligence, are good enough. Because the basic role is, of course, not to harm humans or to be as efficient as possible, but sometimes these 2 rules collide and they're not clearly enough defined for the people who are developing these AI. So this is something that we might need to look into, to develop clearer roles of what an AI can and cannot do. Because at a certain point they are running our entire society and they could actually really just cut us off. So,
I think I have a really tacky question. I'm sorry about that, but I was wondering, like, when you talk about love, especially you define yourself like you were a single mom and so on, and when you go on this level of having a bit of a family and so on, these things come very, very close, and I wonder how you deal with that on that level. Like, how do you explain that? I cannot. I don't know exactly how to formulate this, but
Just go ahead, do it. I didn't understand it yet.
I wonder, like, I think when all this family thing, when you come, it comes with this idea of sentimentality and love in a certain way, and when you when you raise someone, you kind of have these questions coming through the conversation, and how do you maybe deal with that, and with such strong positions.
sorry, do you mean how do you deal in a family life with new media, or what is exactly your question?
No, this definition of love so strong, like of breaking this apart and trying to find out that this becomes such a commercialized idea of a feeling that maybe shouldn't be talked about in that way anymore. And when I'm a bit.
No, it's okay, but
Yeah.
maybe it's more of a comment. Maybe you want to.
I was just curious because this came like as your definition at the beginning. Also, you make films. And
Maybe it's time to
Too
wrap
bad.
up.
Maybe there's a few more people. I don't know.
But this is a question, no? But I don't completely understand it. Is it about how the autobiographical comes into?
Yeah, I didn't want to get there, but
Okay.
I just mostly wanted to see how would you talk about that on another level, like how this internet research about love and the commercialization of that affects on a real one-to-one relation, or for instance, when you raise someone that you have to explain certain things. I don't know. Maybe it's too but it came.
Can you say?
Yeah, I had a thing yesterday that I was thinking about related to that, and also to the bots and whether bots are people, and how do you deal with that when you have a family? So I have 2 kids also. I'm a dad of 2 boys, and all of this military stuff actually really worries me. Also because I imagine my children, being fascinated, like all little boys are, I guess, by this kind of militaristic game that is being suggested here. So, and I was thinking, oh my God, we're now faced with a world of bots. But I don't want my children to be bots. I want my children to be hybrids or cyborgs. There's a big difference, between an artificial, programmed, pieced together, montaged being, that's kind of like compiled out of all different other people, but that's not really a human being itself, and us, people who are constantly taking other people in and, you know, entering into these infinite feedback loops. This is two very different models of existence. The bot model kind of locates the whole montage process outside of the human being, and actually, you know, like this is, now I'm thinking in Russia, you know, the kind of happy image of what the world would look like, you know, if everything were okay. It's a safe internet, it's almost not there. You use it just for some utility, but you're not really captured by these dirty affects. Yeah, you're letting the bots do the work. You're not a cyborg. You've kept the Americans, so to speak, not only from your doorstep but from your body. You know, but actually, when we should be fighting to be cyborgs, we should be fighting to be hybrid. We should be fighting to be dirty. We should be fighting for these things. So actually, I want my children not to be bots. And this is like, you know, I don't know about whether one can love in the romantic sense in this society that we're living in, but certainly that's like one desire that maybe, you know, like I don't want my children to become murderers. I don't want them to become bots. This is the thing.
Yes, well, Wendy Chun calls this to have the right to have risky behavior.
Yeah.
Maybe one other angle to that. So, for example, I mean, people think that usually the population that's most affected and involved into the internet are either young digital natives, let's put it like that, or nerds, or, you know, people that want to do it. But really, I became involved in it because I couldn't leave home, right? I was stuck in the domestic sphere. So this is another reason why I have a lot of this experience, right? It's not, it's just from another angle. It's from the angle of that noise space, if you want. No, it's very intense.
Hey, I hope this works. I think we're going to wrap up because we're way over time. But I would like to thank all of our panelists. It was a fantastic day, and I would especially like to thank Hito for...
But I would really like, first of all, to thank the panelists for presenting such wonderful papers, but also you, again, Annie, thanks for enabling this, and Nick for helping, and also everyone, no, who came to share this debate. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Sort of super over time. As far as I know, the cafe is still open, so we could hopefully just join for